Welcome back to Fire Emblem Thracia 776. This is Chapter 16b. In our last chapter, we learned some important lessons about not going half in on your strategies and not tarrying too long after too much has been lost, and you don't want to fall into the sunk cost fallacy, basically. And just keep going in the hopes that you recoup your losses. This chapter is a large, dense forest with lots of impassable thickets, and there is a little warp gimmick, actually. And it's one of two chapters in the game that has that kind of thing going on, although it's much more forgiving and much more transparent in this chapter. So we've brought mostly casters. We're going to give Homeros a nice little promotion here. Check out these gains. Um, a lot of people kind of overlook Homeros a little bit because, they usually have Asbel. And I think he's really easy to get up to quite a dominant level. I think it's worth it. I didn't use him much until actually I did my no guidance run. And I was posting about it on Reddit, and somebody said to me, well, you tried relying so heavily on Marita, but what about Homeros? He could be like a substitute to Asbel. And I was like, you know what? I think you're right. So on my next run, I used him, and he shouldered quite a bit of the load for me. So I'm doing the same here. I brought Tina so that she could steal a bunch of stuff. So the caveat to what I was saying about there being more items on the A route is that this route actually does have a lot of unique, cool stuff. The problem is that they're all on enemies. So there's actually an extra Pooji on one of these guys in the lower right here. I think that might be what I'm trying to steal now. It's like, yeah, there it is. It's the only other one that you can get for Ashian in the game. Otherwise, you got to repair the first one. So that's kind of cool. I usually don't take it, but I decided I would get it this time because I think the one on Ashian right now is running low, or I knew it was going to be. So there's these dark mages in the center that have rewarp staves. So they can't act on the turn that you have them appear next to you potentially, but it's still the kind of thing where you want to have enough muscle, i.e. like Dean there, to take care of them if you need to. Somebody who can uh, potentially fly over and help with a different group if they need to, rather than having to trudge through thickets with ground units. Um, Dean got berserked there. The boss does have a berserk staff. So you want to bring that restore staff that you got from visiting the church in the previous chapter. You don't get it if you traverse to one of the two exits on that map. I think Lenoan actually might have one in her inventory as well. So maybe that's not an issue, even if you don't go to the church. Although it's honestly easier to go to the church than to just go to either of the two exits in that map. So uh, you just put the extra one on another one of your units in case a different group has somebody who gets berserked, potentially. There's a bunch of funny other little things you can do in this map. There's the sleep sword, or sleep edge, or whatever it's called in the English version, on one of these guys in the upper left. So if you, it's not really useful on B route. Here you see that Salem just ate it. What's the mistake I made there? Well, I mean, I put him out there to fight that bandit. The issue was I wasn't checking stats. So even though Salem had a Thunder Tome, I think, there, he still didn't have enough speed not to get doubled by that guy. So that was just me being lazy, essentially. Also, I was playing Chapter 15 up through however far I get in the game, all in one sitting. So fatigue, not the in-game mechanic, but just personal fatigue might have been playing into it a little bit. So yeah, that sucks. Salem had the sleep staff in his inventory also, like, which I didn't even make use of yet, so that sucks. You don't really need sleep to recruit anybody on this route, but you do need it in order for a reliable method of recruiting what is one of the most difficult characters to recruit in all of Fire Emblem, if not the most. Probably not the most cryptic. That probably goes to like Latina from Tearing Saga or something like that. But as far as just the most difficult gameplay wise, you want to have some sleep castings and also the sleep sword, just to make things easier. You can do it all with the sword, but it's nice to have the staff on hand just for emergencies. I'll try and explain it more once we get to that chapter. Basically, the object is just to get to the upper right of this map and escape, which if you bring a small enough group, you can probably get it done with a combination of flyers. Not having Edda here sucks. But the problem is those guys with rewarp, although they don't always head straight for you, sometimes they just warp somewhere random, as you saw with that first one. And otherwise, you can also just attract them with a powerful magic unit, like I'm doing here with Asbel. I brought Asbel and Homeros. I'm sending Homeros by himself up to the upper left because Shannon is there, and here you can finally recruit him if you talk to him with Homeros. And then also the girl that's warping around randomly, in addition to those mages, is Sarah. And if you talk to her with Leaf, you can recruit her as well. Even though she's an enemy, to my knowledge, she doesn't attack you. She just keeps warping around and occasionally stands still, at which point you can potentially get Leaf over there. Because she doesn't warp every single turn, so you don't necessarily have to predict her. Sometimes you can just wait in place a little bit and she might warp somewhat close to Leaf, and then you can just trudge over there over the course of a couple turns, and eventually you'll catch her. I think she actually has a conversation with Salem. Like, he can talk to her before she's recruited, but it doesn't recruit her, it's just like this extra little conversation. Sarah's little story bits are kind of mysterious often. And then up here, there's one last character we can get. This is Miranda. I don't even know how you're supposed to know to have Leaf wait on this tile, because Miranda doesn't appear in the opening cutscene at all, or anything like that. There's no indication that she would be being held prisoner here. So I'm going to go ahead and call this like a secret character, basically. Definitely the one where, I mean, I guess maybe the expectation is that you're supposed to maybe think that you can seize the fort or something with Leaf, so that's why you have him trudge up there and wait on that tile or something. I don't know. But it's just another like cryptic B route, strange thing. I think it's a more interesting route. Like, honestly, I said that you have to be a little bit crazy to go B route, but I think that it's, in many ways, it's more fun than the A route. The A route is just, you're fighting armies, basically, and you're trudging across like long maps with lots of ramparts and forts and everything. And this is more of like a wilderness route. I guess more so just this chapter than the next chapter. The next chapter is like a kind of a grind with man-made troubles and issues that you have to deal with. Let's talk about the warp tiles, since I mentioned that and then I just kind of left it hanging in the air. You see in certain spots in the forest there are like these open groves, sort of, like just these tiny one square spaces, where like there's kind of like 4 trees on each diagonal corner, kind of. If you step on those, there's a good chance that it's a warp tile, and they typically don't warp you that close to enemies necessarily, which is why I said that it's more forgiving than the other chapter with warp tiles. Mainly, it just wastes your time, in my experience. So, as long as you avoid those, you probably won't ever step on a warp tile in this chapter. There's a house in the lower left that doesn't give you any item. It just tells you about the dangers of the forest. It's not something you really need to be afraid of as long as you know that they're there and you know what the pattern is. Um, Even if like it's almost better to bring flimsy units, is what I'm trying to say, because if they do happen to get warped over to where one of these like big bulky bandits is, maybe they'll just get captured. In which case, you can probably pick them off with like Dean or somebody. Although they'll probably lose a lot of valuable staves and whatnot. So, I mean, what I'm trying to say here is, like, just avoid the tiles and you'll probably be good. Another funny thing, that since we're coming up on it, is there's a dancer in the upper left, and I don't know that this is the only Fire Emblem game where there are enemy dancers somewhere on the map, or enemy bards or whatever, but this is the only one where they actually do something. Where they actually dance for enemy units, so be careful of that. You're going to see why that could be dangerous in a little bit. So if you're not looking to steal everything with Tina from all of these guys, just make sure you check inventories anyway, because like there's a lot of weird weapons that you might not have seen too often before. On a lot of these guys, like some of them have master weapons. So one of them has a sleep edge, like we went over. I didn't take it here because I actually had a fun sort of idea for recruiting Xavier later that didn't involve sleep. So we'll see how that works out for me. And I just didn't want to like use another thief casting. I'm not sure if I'm repairing it here necessarily, or if I'm going to do that later. I didn't see. I don't even know if I ran out of it yet. I must have, if I'm using it on stupid crap like javelins. If you bring Dean and you have him stand near Lenoan, he has a good shot of being able to capture these dark mages outright, especially if you have his special lance, which is great for that. You can get some rewarp uses from this map if you haven't already from that previous Gaiden. I think this is your second chance to get some. And you might not think that they're much, but there's some nice things that you can do with rewarp. It's an A rank staff that it warps the user, not somebody else. So it's like a personal use warp staff. And it does use up your turn, and I only specify that because there's a unit in Tearing Saga that, well, there's actually a few units in Tearing Saga that can self-warp and then use an action on the same turn, believe it or not. So it can be as useful for something as minor as, like, there's a chapter later where your guys are all kind of trapped behind doors, and instead of having to use a door key, you could just rewarp out. You can use it in like an offensive way. If you have like a promoted sister who can use light tomes, then you can kind of like ambush some dark mages. Like what you can do is put Rizire / Nosferatu on Lenoan and have her warp into some guys, take care of those. That especially could be useful on like chapter 17A, I think it is, because at one point dark mages start warping in. They start funneling in from like close to the boss, and I've never done this, but if you had Lenoan you can't have her promoted at that time, but if you have her at like a high enough rank potentially, you could like cut off those guys before they start warping into your own guys. I don't really know how you would get her up to the requisite staff rank without having her promoted by that point. That would take a lot of grinding. But I think you see what I mean. You probably do it with maybe like Sarah too, because she has higher staff rank. It's just an example of how rewarp can be useful, whereas otherwise it can kind of seem like a utility staff that has like only minor use. My suggestion is just get creative with it, which can be said of all staffs in this, I think. So at this point I was wondering, like, I wonder if Shannon is just docile like he is in the previous chapter. And I was thinking, like, I can save some time here if I just attack this hero here, and then on the next turn I can just recruit Shannon. Yeah, we'll see how that plays out in a moment, so keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, some of these groups on this map, like, you don't even really have to deal with them if you don't want to. If you have enough flying units and you can see a decent path through the trees. I don't know if you can really see it, but there's these darker parts of the trees. Those are the thickets typically. So if you have good eyesight, if you have good color recognition, then you can kind of scope it out. Otherwise, you got to basically just mouse over them a lot and use some of your units to scope that out. Yeah, so Shannon definitely is hostile in this map. But what's funny is his death quote is like, "Whoa, wait a minute, let's talk this out." And it's like, bro, you came at me. So that's not really a huge loss. Sorry to say. Shannon is just he has no stats, even though we've established stats aren't a big deal in this. I think he has like respectable sword rank. It's not like A, I don't think. I think it's like C maybe. So he can use some okay things. You could probably put the king sword on him or something. Like, no, seriously. And he would probably be alright. He has like, I think he might have an extra point of movement off of like what would be normal for that class, or he just has like decent move, being a promoted unit technically, despite his stats. And his claim to fame is that he has bargain. So like in the Reinhardt chapter, there's some good stuff. So what I did in one of my runs, in fact, my best ever Ironman, I only had like 3 or 4 deaths, and I was just cruising the whole time. I actually went beer out, and I sent Shannon down to that shop and bought a bunch of extra like night proofs so I could get some guys promoted that I normally wouldn't waste night proofs on. You can buy more wind tomes at some point, I think, or like more light tomes, which are normally pretty rare, and like put them on all your sisters and stuff. And then there's a secret shop in the second or third to last chapter, depending on how you count guidance, which in order to get the member card, you have to do something that like nobody ever does. Even I've never done it in like 10 tries. I just don't bother because the secret shop in this game is not that good. It just has stat boosting items. But theoretically, you could send Shannon up there with the member card and, you know, like buy half price rings or whatever. So that's why I say that he is not the worst unit in this game compared to like Trude, just in context. Because like Trude is a better combat unit, but he doesn't have those extra uses that a character like Shannon has. He is certainly not like the most impressive unit you'll ever see, but I like him. I like characters in Fire Emblem that are like that. I wish they all weren't like hyper attractive, amazing stats, you know, with like no extra skills to speak of. I wish there were more Shannons and like Renaults and stuff in this game. I like those units, and I'll usually make use of them if I can. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this chapter. Like I said, it's really not that big of a sweat. Salem might have a different opinion about that, and so certainly it's a loss, because the reason I was bringing Salem at all is just to get him some extra experience. He's like a kind of a jack of all trades caster type unit. I don't know if I talked about him too much. He can use like pretty much any tome. He can use dark tomes, everything except for light, I think. He can use like wind, thunder magic, fire magic, at somewhat low ranks, mind you. And he has like good starting rank in staff. He's got C rank. So he can already use like, the sleep staff he comes with. He can use restore, a torch, all the crap like that. And if you get him enough uses of staves in these middle chapters, and then you promote him for a free extra staff rank, then you've got another A rank staff user that can also fight. But like his starting stats aren't good. So like, as you can see, his speed is not nearly good enough for what I needed him to do in this chapter, and that's not his fault. That shouldn't be a reflection on Salem. It should be a reflection on me as a tactician. But other than that, and my little experiment with the AI of Shannon, otherwise I'm okay with my performance on this chapter compared to the last couple. That's all we have for today, pretty much. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in 17B.